Welcome to the March meeting, Planning Board meeting. Please stand, because we're going to do the recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Howdy, everybody. First on the agenda is the approval of Planning Board minutes from February 9th.
Motion.
Make a motion?
Second.
All right. How does everybody vote?
Aye.
Aye. Good, passed. All right, next. Flintlock Storage. Who's here to represent? That would be Ms. Julie.
Excuse me.
Good evening, Jamie LaJudas from Inside Engineering, Surveying and Landscape Architecture. Here on behalf of the Flintlock Storage Project, also present is the Vassie family for the project. Do you want me to go right into the
Yes.
public hearing? Okay. So the project is located on Route 52. It is a 1.67 acre parcel. There is existing meadow field area with a town-regulated wetland to the north of the property that extends through the center, basically creating a wetland or buffer area through almost the entirety of the property. It is commercially zoned, so we are proposing a self-storage unit facility. There are 4 buildings proposed for self-storage units and an office 2-story building, which I'll show you some architecturals in a minute. The buildings are varying sizes. We did try to site them outside of any wetland areas themselves so that we were conscious of those environmental constraints. The wetland itself is not necessarily a pristine wetland, as I'm sure Bruce will let you know later. It was previously disturbed. The site had existing buildings on site that were demolished. So it is a very disturbed site itself. So anything we're proposing would be an improvement to that wetland. Such improvements consist of stormwater management areas to collect and treat any of the stormwater runoff from the project. We are proposing gravity from the south to the north, to basically in the direction of the way the grading goes now. There is an extensive landscaping plan that is associated with that stormwater management, those stormwater management practices. There is landscaping along the Route 2052, and the board will be pleased to know, and Liz will be pleased to know as well, that we're able to find some tall windows for the building. So now we will not have a windowless facade along 52, meeting that requirement of the code. We have an image of the buildings themselves. This is the one that is facing Route 22. So that has 4 windows. And then also an image of the proposed office building. The project did receive approval from the health department for a holding tank. Instead of having a full septic system, it is going to be a very minimally used septic, so it'll only need to be pumped every 6 months or so. We did not need DOT approval for this project because we are accessing an existing curb cut along 52. We did, however, receive information and approval from them to modify an existing pipe going through the property. Basically, the culvert comes onto the property and then goes to the north. We are rerouting that for our stormwater management practices. We have developed, the applicant's attorney and the planning board attorney have come to an agreement on a access agreement, I think is what it's called, maybe, which I'm sure John will go through in a little bit. It's basically to facilitate the maintenance of improvements that we are proposing within that access. That's a right-of-way basically to the south of the property. And you're utilizing here. Essentially, that's the project. So we've been through multiple discussions, multiple board meetings. I think we're pretty close to the finish line here. We've addressed a majority, if not all, the comments, and we're looking for a closed public hearing and potentially approval.
John?
Good evening. For the record, my name is John Andrews. I serve as engineer to the planning board in this matter. Before you open the public hearing, I think there's a couple things that we just need to go through. You do have a memo from me. It's not a very extensive one, but there are a couple things I want to just walk through. The board at one point in time had identified what they felt to be three significant issues. Number one dealt with the use of the common access easement. This property derives its access off a common driveway, and what the board asked is, short of an actual filed revision to that easement, was there something that could be developed in terms of an agreement or an understanding between the town and the applicant to cover this? The two attorneys, the planning board attorney and the attorney for the applicant, worked through it. It was, you should have received an email version of it today. And basically what it does, it permits the improvements, it provides for their long-term maintenance, and it protects both the town and the users of that easement, and it makes it available for the other third parties. So that matter has essentially been put to bed. It will need to be fully executed, completed, and actually filed in the county clerk's office as part of any approval that you may issue, but the matter's been put to bed. The next was with this orphan pipe that came across the road, had no ending, except it ran through their property and discharged at the wetlands. They contacted DOT. DOT said, hey, we really have no interest. If you can daylight the pipe and disconnect and give us an opening, and they actually gave you a dimension, 19 foot off the white line, they were able to accommodate that. The matter's been put to bed. DOT signed off on it. They also went one step further and had our own highway superintendent look at it, so he was good with it. The only thing that does is one of your other issues is the sidewalk easement. In order to construct the sidewalk easement, construct the sidewalk down the road, what one would have to do is push the sidewalk to the front of the easement, not a big deal, and construct some type of retaining wall or other device to keep people from falling into the open end of the pipe. As long as, and I think you had indicated at the workshop you would be willing to entertain that, you probably should at some point in time tonight nod your head and say, okay, that's a good, we'll accept the sidewalk easement with that as part of it. The last was Putnam County, as Ms. LaJudice said. Putnam County has approved this. There is no standard wastewater treatment system on this site. They are using a holding tank. There are certain conditions that the health department has proposed for that holding tank, and as long as it is operated consistent with that, there should be no issue. So they have put to bed the three major issues that you had with this. A couple other things. There's a minor difference on the drawings. There's still a pipe that pops out of the ground. I don't know how, but they'll take care of it. And then we've been back and forth on bonds. And there are theoretically 4 bonds for this. There is an erosion control bond. Both Insight and myself agree on an amount of $7,460 for that. There is a long-term stormwater management facility bond, and it's initially $78,575. That covers construction of the on-site facilities, everything else. And there's another provision in your code that says when you have something like this in permanent stormwater management facilities, that there should be a maintenance guarantee. My recommendation is you take the $78,000, when everything's done, been certified by them, it would be automatically reduced down to the $15,000 to an amount of $15,000 to be held for long-term maintenance to make sure that everything functions the way it is. Because this is somewhat unusual, as Bruce will tell you, we're actually building stuff in the wetlands, which is not typically done here, but in this case, it gives us an opportunity to improve the wetlands. So that's why it's being considered. There's a site landscaping bond in the amount of $17,680. And there is also a wetland mitigation bond of $20,632, all of which appear in a final resolution if we ever reach that point. But it would be my intention, providing there's no substantive comment received during the course of the public hearing, that the board accept those amounts and make the recommendation to the town board. We will we will definitely require the assistance of the planning board attorney in drafting these bonds, because they're a little complicated for a site like this, a little above Vera's and my skill level, shall we say. So we'll defer to them. But after Bruce, I think you can open the public hearing.
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Barber. I'm the town's environmental consultant. I want to touch briefly on what was the actual fourth substantial issue on this project that actually showed up early in the review situation. That had to do with these aforementioned wetlands. When we start to look at the project, we found that there were apparent wetlands in the center section of the property that had been previously unidentified, and the applicant hired a soil scientist to confirm the fact that indeed there were jurisdictional wetlands out in the middle of the property that had to be dealt with. And as Jamie mentioned, this site had been heavily used in the past, and when the site visit was conducted, it's basically a lawn surface that had been managed. There had been ruts and locations where there had been changes to the site over time. And when we look at wetlands, all wetlands basically are not created the same. And this was what we would call a low-functioning wetlands that basically was for flood attenuation and groundwater recharge. And we had an opportunity here to work with the board in a very rare instance to actually improve a wetland through development. And that's exactly what's happened here. The applicant is constructing their stormwater management practice in the wetland system proper, but it's providing the hydrology necessary to actually expand the function of that wetland, treat stormwater that's coming off the site, and also provide hydrology for plant material that is going to be installed to increase the habitat value of that area as well as the riparian area of the small stream. The applicant has provided the bond estimate, which would be returned after a 3-year period when it is determined by the town that at least 80% of the plants have survived once it's signed off that they've been planted. They've also provided a management and maintenance plan for that 3-year period to ensure that invasive species won't come and colonize that area, and the plants that are planted have the best opportunity possible to survive. There was a pollutant loading analysis specific to phosphorus, which is a pollutant of concern in this watershed, and found that the pollutant phosphorus is going to be reduced post-construction from pre-construction levels running off the site. And there was also a hydrological analysis done to ensure that there's a balanced situation with water coming into the wetlands versus water leaving. It's an extensive review process. I give Insight and Jamie a lot of credit for going through this process and working with us because indeed it has been a successful project in mitigating what's happening in the wetlands. Other than that, I have a comment memo with one singular comment on it that just has to do with the storage area at the back of the property. In reading through the most recent iteration of the plans, I find that pursuant to the code, the comment is substantially addressed. Any questions?
Oh. Okay. Any questions? Let's open up a public hearing in regards to this.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. It's open for public hearing.
Good evening. My name is Tom Barbero. My wife and I own the house that's behind them over there.
Okay.
And our biggest concern is about our privacy. What we're going to do to stop people from driving up to my front doorstep, which they've been doing already, and asking questions about if I want to do roofing or siding work, which Mr. Frank does himself because his trailer's parked there right now. how tall is this building gonna be, is one of my questions. Is there gonna be lights on 24 hours, 7 days a week? Is there gonna be people coming and going 7 hours, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? Things like that. It sounds like you have a very good wet plan operation lined up here. Our biggest concern is our privacy and not having people drive up to my front doorstep,
Okay,
which has been going on lately.
okay.
Other than that, I don't know what else to say. Except for that concern right there.
I don't think you can talk.
Ready?
Jamie, can you give him,
I'm sorry,
can you sign the sheet?
sign the sheet?
Yes,
Jamie?
yeah. I think the biggest one is ours. You can't force it.
Thank you.
No problem. State your name.
My name is Rebecca Boyd. I am the neighbor to the north on the rest of the wetlands.
Okay.
And I have to say, I don't have any concerns at all. I think he will be a good neighbor, at least for my side. He asked us all sorts of questions in advance, came down to look at the property with us to make sure that we were happy with the plans that he was making, and I have to say, I appreciate that. And we need something, so I'll be the neighbor that doesn't, that surprisingly doesn't have any issues with building next door.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Susan Kotzer. I think the first gentleman that got up, his concerns about the lights being on 24/7, that would be, if I lived over there, that would be a large issue with myself. So I think that needs to be addressed. And here comes John. So, yeah, I think that would be a big issue. So do they go off at a certain time so that people do not have, what do they call it, light pollution? So I'm just filling this in. Thank you.
No
All
problem.
right, thanks.
Anybody else?
Is that it? Fabulous. I'd like to address some of those comments, if I may.
Jamie, could you
Yes.
speak up a little?
Yes.
I'm really hard of hearing. Thank you.
Sorry. So I'd like to address some of those comments, if I may. So the lighting is essentially, we do have a lighting plan that is for security lighting purposes. There are minimal light poles on the property. There are lights around the building themselves, but they're not intended to be on 24/7. They are, I believe there's a note on our plans pertaining to dimmable controls and, dawn to dusk, but will dim when nothing is there. I believe there's motion sensors also. The hours of operation are also listed on our plan. Which I can also read, because I don't have it memorized, I apologize. But we are planning on having Monday through Friday from 8 to 4 p.m., and this is the office hour operation, but the self-storage and the buildings themselves would be open 24 hours, 7 days a week. Basically, we don't anticipate, everyone that has a storage unit coming there every single day to access their unit and then everyone leaving. So it's people come and drop their stuff off and then maybe go once a month at best. But it's not anticipated to be a high-traffic scenario.
It's motion sensor, correct, like you stated?
The lighting.
Yes, that's a big deal. I understand what, I understand what the concern is, sorry, I have laryngitis. Be it motion sensor or not. I worked in a facility overnight where literally the lights on 24/7. It's a big difference between the two. If it's motion sensor, they're off. We have parts of the facility that would shut off at certain times. So it's a big difference. Are they gonna have any type of signs or anything to kind of point people out so they're not going on the gentleman's front yard or anything?
We were just discussing that.
What's that? Oh, no, 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 I'm not saying for your yard, no, no. Yeah,
Can you, could you please go over the landscaping plan of the back of the property with the screening and the spruce and all that?
I can, yes. I just wanted to clarify that we do have a note on the plan about the exterior lighting shall be fitted with timers, dimmers, sensors, and or photocell controls to turn lights off during daylight hours and when lighting is not needed to reduce overall energy consumption and eliminate unneeded lighting. So we are going to have them with motion sensors or
Okay.
some type of control to minimize that light spillage. We were just discussing, the applicant and I, well, as we were listening to comments, if the board and/or neighbors would be acceptable with this, we could propose a private property sign at, just past our second entrance. That could help,
I mean, that's,
but unfortunately, there's nothing else that we
Okay.
could
like I said, that's something you guys could work out amongst yourselves.
police enforcement matter. To offer at that point, because it is your access to your property. You want us to put a gate to your property?
Yeah, you should come up to talk to you, part of the public record, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Frank Vassi. Tom, my neighbor, had mentioned the height of the buildings. I think they're going to be, they're all 8 foot. Yeah, the low part's 8, it goes up to 11, I think, at the highest point.
Okay,
We'll have 6-foot fencing
okay,
between the storage units and Tom's property,
okay,
along with Boyd's property. And there'll be rows of pine trees planted
Okay.
there as well, to try and help, with the privacy. Trying to think what else.
If I may just point out those areas. That's the one. So we do have a proposed outdoor storage area, vinyl fence, outdoor storage area in the back that would be fenced off. There is extensive landscaping as far as pine trees and spruces along that side, so that will aid in separation from the views to the neighbors, to the buildings themselves. And then there is also landscaping along the right of way as well, even not just any buildings from that view.
One more thing about the lighting. I don't know if it's a good idea to leave storage units completely blacked out.
well, it's gonna be motion sensor, they won't be blacked out.
Yeah, and-
Anybody's walking by, it's gonna,
It'll pop on, but
Yeah.
we have a shop there, or a garage is going to be there. So on that, which is on the other side of the property, it's more towards the roadside, we may like to keep a light or two on there, just so,
yeah, I understand.
you know what I'm
I
saying? So it's
understand,
not completely blacked out.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just making sure, like, in regards to his fear of
Yeah.
having the lights on 24/7, yeah, if I live next door to a school, like in a city, where the
Yeah.
lights on 24/7, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little bit inconvenient.
Yep.
But if they're motion sensor, then I know exactly what it's working, because I worked in a facility like
Yeah.
that, so.
Okay.
Oh, come
I
on up.
don't know if a 6-foot fence is gonna be enough, to be honest with you. So I can stand in my living room right now and look out the window and I can see everything. Whether he wants to build a 10-foot mound and put a 6-foot fence on top of that to block things, that would be a different story. I really don't know what the plan is. Like again, as I said, my privacy.
I understand that, sir, like I said.
I mean, on my second floor, if I look out the window on the way up there, I'm not gonna complain about that. On my living room and my back bedroom, I don't wanna see all this going on, to be honest with you. Like I said, I don't think a 6-foot fence is gonna cut it whatsoever. Thank you.
No problem. So,
If I may, Jamie? Sure. Your rear portion, I think that's the higher end of the site anyway. The balance of the site heading back toward the road is lower end. Is there any opportunity between your outdoor storage area and the property line to perhaps, as that gentleman suggested, add a berm? Even if you add 2 or 3 feet and put the fence on top, the total height would end up being around 10 feet, but I'll leave it up to you folks.
We have one already proposed.
Okay?
So we do have a berm already proposed along the fence line, and with the highest portion of the property here. We did extend, there's a 2-foot berm here, so we will be planting basically against that.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, what are the heights of proposed pine trees that are being in?
Those are 5 to 6 foot high.
5 to 6. Okay. So between the berm and the trees, you're looking at 7 to 8 feet at the time of construction.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay.
Again, I do want to point out that this is a commercial property.
I understand. That's why I asked about the sensors, that's why.
Yeah.
So, anything else? Anybody else?
Have any questions?
Go once? Go twice? All right. Thank you. What's that? We have to close it again? All right, we're gonna close it to, close the public hearing. Anyone make the motion?
Motion.
Hang on.
No, you're okay.
Oh, you're not coming in for this? Okay.
Jackie,
Motion?
Motion.
Anyone second?
I'll second.
How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. Good enough, it's closed. Thank you, everybody. Now-
So, I don't have that many more remaining comments. We did a pretty extensive review. The applicant's folks were very responsive about architecture and wetland and signs and sidewalk, and also the access. So a lot of these issues are substantially addressed. And I know that last time we'd recommend the board go ahead with the first part of this process. And I have prepared, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Liz Axelson. I'm the planning consultant to the Town of Kent Planning Board. So for the planning board's consideration, I prepared a short environmental assessment form, parts 2 and 3. And what that does is it goes over potential impacts of the project. And then I've also prepared a resolution, a draft resolution, in case the board feels that they may be ready to proceed. It's a resolution for approval with conditions, many conditions, for special use permit, site plan, steep slope and erosion control, and wetland permits. And just briefly on the short environmental assessment form, part 2, a small impact was noted on the character of the community. Another small impact was noted on wastewater treatment facilities, and a moderate to large impact was noted on adverse change to natural resources and wetlands, and a small impact was noted on potential for erosion, flooding, and drainage problems. And these are all acknowledged, but the plans have addressed many of these things with appropriate mitigation based on what you've heard from Bruce and John. And so I have prepared that form, and in the resolution, I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look, if you have any questions at all. I prepared a draft resolution, and it was just recently revised because Bruce and John and I were conferring about different remaining things. But the resolution does include action on the seeker environmental negative declaration. So I don't know if you want to just ask questions about the resolution, and then I could give you a
Is this the
very
one you
brief
sent today?
walkthrough. What?
Is this the one you sent today?
It's the one I sent today.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Well, would you like me to give you a walkthrough, or,
I think John's,
okay,
I won't let Liz, because most of the changes were based on my, and
Okay.
she actually got it out to you early. So I think there's a couple things that changed in this that you need to be aware of.
Okay.
The first is we actually put the bond numbers in there.
Okay.
So that when you're approving this, you know what those numbers are. They're in there and they're in bold. The second major addition that she did is the sidewalk easement and the access easement. Both need to be fully completed and filed in the office of the county clerk.
Okay.
And they were both bifurcated into two additional conditions, but they essentially say, the town attorney's got to sign off, you got to be comfortable with it, and then it goes to the town board, and it gets accepted and filed in the office of the county clerk. Other than that, this is the same resolution that Liz prepared earlier in the week before I started to butcher it up. So
Okay.
I'll take credit for that, but it should be essentially ready for your consideration.
okay.
I had one question, somewhat related. On the long-term stormwater management bond, that got bounced from 57 to 78. Can you tell me why?
That was actually compliments of insight.
It was
They
their-
made
it was
some
their
modifications, they increased some categories, they added some other things, so the number went up.
Okay, at their direction. Thank you.
Based on theirs, and I'm not going to argue with them.
Thank you.
How's that sound?
Okay. All right.
so would you like me to give you a walkthrough, or do you feel
You can do
somewhat
quick-
comfortable?
Yeah, the quick one, that's fine.
A
I would
quick
think.
one.
The Spark Notes version.
Okay, the SparkNotes version. Okay, so basically, the first page of the draft resolution walks you through all the first parts of the review. It describes the proposed action, which you've already heard about. It tells you that it's an unlisted action under SECRA. It talks about the board making referrals and initiating their lead agency role. And then you set a public hearing, which you held tonight. Did we close the public hearing? Hang on a second here.
Yes, we did.
Yes, you did. Okay. And then basically from page 2 on, the first item that says now therefore be resolved takes you through the reasoning for the secret negative declaration, indicating it's in a commercial zone and they've complied with the zoning requirements and they've incorporated landscaping, wetland mitigation. I'm going through these quickly. They've dealt with the sewage treatment, and that the development is focused on the southern and central area of the site to minimize disturbance in the back parts and in the wetland. You've closed the public hearing. There's a waiver in here where you'll be waiving the requirement for retention of tree rows due to the need for extensive on-site landscaping and wetland buffer planting for mitigation. Then I'm going on to page 3, and it cites the different parts of the code, chapters 39A, 66, that pertain to the review of this application. The third item at the top of page 3 is resolved that the planning board grants final approval with conditions to the proposed special use permit, site plan, wetland permit, and steep slope and erosion control plan approvals as depicted on the plans, and then it lists those plans in detail, the most current version. At the bottom of page 3, we begin with the conditions of approval, which again, as you know, the environmental and engineering consultants and I have conferred to make sure we've included all of those. And so then you have conditions 1 through 25. And it has to do with addressing remaining comments, required approvals from agencies, the bonds that have been mentioned beforehand. And you'll see on page 4, beginning at 8, that those bond amounts are highlighted in bold. And then On page 5, approving bond agreements, stormwater management agreement, stormwater maintenance and easement agreement, wetland mitigation landscaping bond, erosion control landscaping bond, certification by the planning board attorney about the easement related to the sidewalk for that legal instrument, the sidewalk easement being completed, accepted by the town board, and filed. And same is true of the access agreement and legal instruments, that those need to be, we'll need more information, including meets and bounds description, and the access agreement has to be completed, accepted by the town board, and filed with the clerk of the town and county. And then there's an inspection fee, payment of all consulting fees, and then the last 3 conditions, 23 through 25, talk about potential expiration of the special use permit and the site plan and the timelines for those expirations. And 25 says it's the responsibility of the applicant to provide all the information necessary to address the conditions. So I think that's a pretty extensive overview. Any questions?
So I know this draft has just been modified today, but the prior draft, Jamie, has your client had a chance, have you had a chance to review this and the 21 conditions? And are you good with the 21 conditions here?
25.
25 conditions.
25.
21, I thought.
25. 25.
The original has 21, the revised
This is
has
the,
25.
I have an earlier draft, I apologize.
Okay.
Okay. But it says,
Yes, we've had a chance to review,
that's how you
and
got to 25. Okay.
we haven't
Whether
seen the
it's
25 version, but we saw the 21 version that you were discussing, so we're going with the
Thank you.
21. And I think the other ones are
Probably
final.
in that file somewhere.
Two deal with the sidewalk easement, two deal with the access easement.
Those are there for.
And all they are saying the attorney has to agree and certify, make sure everything is in its proper form, that it needs to be filed in the same, so it's the same.
Then, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and your attorney has been an advocate for at least one of those, so.
We got
Yes,
sidewalk.
I think he's still doing so.
Liz,
Thank you.
So,
I have one question for you.
yes.
Because the bond amounts are in this, should we do the bond first before this, or it doesn't
Yeah.
matter?
It's all incorporated in the, do you want to, John, do you want to do it? It's incorporated, so, can I just, my understanding from our conversations today, it's all incorporated so that if you approve, if you adopt this resolution, you will be making all the approvals with all the conditions.
Okay.
It's, on some of the simpler ones, it's been custom and practice to approve the bonds and refer it to the town board. We thought in this case, since it's an overarching approval and you have all the permits identified in this approval, it would be consistent with what's done in those smaller ones to actually put the bond amounts in here so that you're approving on the first 3 or 4 whereases, the erosion control and the wetland permits, and then you're approving and accepting the same numbers later on in the same document. So it's a little different, but we think it's a little bit more efficient doing it this way for you.
Okay.
So you could, if you feel prepared, unless you have other questions, make a motion and second to adopt the
25
resolution as
resolutions.
prepared.
As per what you wrote down, all 25, correct?
Right.
Okay.
25.
Yeah, 25. I know, my voice. I sound like Froggy from Little Rascals. All right, everybody. I'll make the recommendation. Let's adopt the resolution. Can I get a motion?
I make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, how do we vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Chairman, it
Yes.
should actually be a roll call, just to be
Oh, okay, good enough. I'll do a roll call. Roll call. How do you vote?
I vote aye.
Your name?
Giancarlo.
Simon Carey, aye.
Hugo German, Chairman. Aye.
Jackie Bashar, aye.
Thomas Ferroni, aye.
There you go. It's done. Resolution is passed.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
just for the record, Mr. Green Cruz and Mr. Olmec were
Perhaps,
listed on there are not.
yes, correct. So, that's it.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Not a problem. Have a good night. But she was right. No, because I read yours before, 21, before we got here. I never looked at my emails. I've been driving in the car.
We've got to put some kind of revision control in documents where
I did. It was supposed to be Monday, not today.
revision control.
Yeah, everything else, I guess.
Need a date at the top of everything.
This panel going to put made that clear from the start.
He's our bouncer. Thank you.
Otherwise, this is the one final.
Good night, ma'am. Have a good night.
So it's no big deal.
So next on the thing is Rocky Ridge.
The whole count?
Okay, we're below the line.
Rocky Ridge is just an aside this evening. There is no action to be taken.
Correct.
Rocky Ridge is held in abeyance. Old 17 LLC has to correct the issues identified by Mr. Walters in his order to remedy. We are waiting for updated information from the applicant's engineer. My
Okay.
understanding is they're in the process of preparing an as-built, and we should be receiving it sometime in the near future. And once we do, Old 17 will reappear above the line and be back in front of you.
Okay. I think we have.
They're going to be applying for approvals that currently exist to the board for site plan, wetlands, and erosion with flow permits as part of the correction of the alleged listed violations that occurred.
Do you have something to say?
I was just coming into
Oh,
If you had any
okay.
questions.
So the Rocky Ridge is going to be held in abeyance, as John indicated, because they would like to purchase the property, but in order to do so, the violations need to be corrected. So the second applicant, per se, when the parallel track will be 17, old 17 LLC to be before this board to correct those violations.
Good enough.
Okay.
Good enough. All right. Next on board would be Doherty Electric. That would be you.
Dory, we've been promised a submittal. When the submittal appears, we will be back in front of you with,
Kathy will be blaming her husband. There you go. All right, next.
Holly property.
Holly
We're awaiting a submittal.
Okay. Friel and Pure
I
Property.
think that was moved to administrative track.
Correct.
And I think we're waiting for a final submittal.
Correct.
I
Georgia
think-
Sally Marriott Property.
Mooney Hill Road, that was moved to administrative track. It
Okay.
was actually, they have made a final submittal.
Oh, okay.
You should have all received, probably earlier this week, a memo on completeness.
Okay.
They're essentially complete. The only action that's outstanding is I need to get the board to accept a bond amount and make a referral to the town board.
Okay.
Now, ordinarily, you do that at a regular, you need advance time.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the memo tonight, I can go through it if you wish,
Yeah. You know what?
rather
Just-
than postponing it.
Yes.
All right.
Let's just try to expedite these things instead of having all these things group up.
A
Just,
month, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So, they've got a couple minor items that need to be resolved. My memo is dated March 7th, 2023. They have a couple minor items, an owner's consent note, some details on the construction sequence, a sheet list. But this one's a little unusual in that they submitted a bond estimate. I had asked for a breakdown. They gave me a breakdown, and in reviewing it, their amount was $19,503, which seemed rather excessive because this is kind of like a little small site plan. So when I went through it, there were items on there that we don't normally include in the bond. The major one was topsoil. We don't typically include topsoil. So in reworking the bond, we prepared our own bond estimate,
Okay.
a copy of which is attached. The amount of that estimate is $8,500, and we would recommend that this board accept the $8,500 recommendation and send it to the town board for approval.
Good enough.
You want a motion for that?
Yes, let's make a motion.
Motion to accept the 8.5 bond for Marriott property.
Second.
How do we vote? Aye.
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 Aye. Passes. There you go.
Thank you.
Done.
We'll move that ahead. Vera will be, that'll be good. Let's see. Putnam Nursing, I think that's done. They got their extensions and
Yes.
Annunziata, that's on administrative track, but we're waiting for a submittal from their engineer. I think Vera's actually got the bond amount resolved, so we're waiting.
Of course.
Real Budo,
I heard from that same
The extensions are approved already, so it's done.
So why is it on this?
He's made aware the board approved the soil remediation at the site, Vivo. So John and I are going to speak later about getting some dates to him so we can get that effectuated. As far as the amended site plan application, we have not seen that submittal.
Okay. Ranieri?
Ranieri, we're waiting for a
Can I
submittal.
just go back for a second? Sorry. On Putnam Nursing, if the extension is done, we don't need it on the list anymore, is that right?
Yes.
That would be correct, I would.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So Ranieri?
Ranieri, we're waiting for a submittal.
Okay. Same, same gentleman.
Coincidentally,
There
it's
you
a
go.
similar engineer.
Yeah, what a coincidence. Patterson Crossing?
Crossing, I think that's been dealt with. I think they're kind of like good for a while until
Okay.
the next reapproval.
Guy Lanza Maya?
Lots, Maya, we're waiting for a submittal there. That is not the same
The
engineer.
two houses?
Yeah, he's trying to.
Yeah. Yeah. White Vernon?
White Vernon should actually come off. They're done.
Okay, they're
You
done.
signed you've signed the plans.
Okay.
They were picked up, or they were conveyed to their engineer.
Okay.
And we're done with this one.
NYCDP in Seven Hills?
After the last meeting, apparently Liz had some issues that she was going to resolve. I
Yeah, it
haven't
needs
heard whether that's
submittals.
been done.
I wrote down it needs a submittal.
Yeah, I think Vera was going to reach out to Tom and get a submittal, or Liz was. I haven't seen such a submittal.
Okay. Kent Manor?
Kent Manor, nothing to report. I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Route 52?
Route 52, we're waiting on them. They had a revised alternate proposal, but we told them to do their homework and bring us something that was reasonably representative of what they proposed to do and as detailed as possible. So I think they're doing that.
And Kent?
The
Town
Kent
of Kent
excavation law?
excavation law.
I have no knowledge. I have not received any direction from the town board.
Should be having public hearings soon. I'll be directed to be told when it would be.
Okay,
So that should be fun.
that should do it, folks.
Excellent. That also. All right, everybody. Any other questions, comments, quandaries? No? Thanks for showing up. I'd like to make the motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
There you go. Have a nice day.